Ain't no sleeping till Hollywood. Ain't no sleeping till Hollywood. Hollywood, yeah.
You are listening to the No Sleep Till Hollywood podcast. We're not sleeping until we make it in Hollywood. And while we're up, we'll be discussing the state of the industry and, of course, our place in it. It's your girl, Ayanna Costley, and I'm here with my co-host.
It's your girl, Gaelyn D. Smith, and today we are here to talk about a show that Ayanna put me on to a couple episodes ago, okay? So we're one for one right now. We're one for one. And the show is really, really good. It's called Diarra From Detroit. But before we get into that, I just want to take some time to acknowledge that Bad Boys 4 came out this past weekend.
Yes.
And if you were to read the headlines on social media, you would think that it was surprising that this movie that started in the late 90s, that is still creating new sequels, you would think that it would be surprising that this movie has done well. I mean, like, we are seeing people just shocked that folks could sit down and watch an action movie with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence after Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on national TV.
Right.
And I just think it's hilarious because who was finna cancel Will Smith?
That's the thing. That's the thing. I think the people who are surprised are in Stephen A. Smith, but it's not the broad.
I just can't watch a film with this man. Shut up.
Yeah, it's not the majority of people. And when you think about like Bad Boys being a franchise, like this has been decades in the making. As soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, I'm going. I got my little $5 T-Mobile Tuesdays discounted ticket and I went and saw it. Who cares about this slap anymore? I'm sorry.
Give it up. Sorry. The slap did. Here's the thing. I saw a tweet and they were basically saying how like Chris Rock is like white America's black friend. And so like white America was shocked when he wasn't our black friend. And I'm like,
right.
Yeah, like that mattered to y'all differently. Like, I'm going to be really honest. Will Smith was very clear. He said, keep my wife's name out your mouth and slap. It was very clear to me what was going on. So I just don't, I was never going to cancel my Uncle Will for slapping
or not see this new movie in theaters. Like, what do you mean? And I don't know why it's so surprising because number one, the movie itself, like the theatrical release, made the entire budget back in the first weekend, plus a little more. That was just in the first, I think they count 3 days for the weekend. Yeah. But they're already making back all the money and getting more on top of that. So this movie is easily a success.
Shoot, and then Gabrielle and Jessica Alba, they got that spinoff TV show.
Well, that show did get canceled, but it was good. I watched it.
I haven't. So y'all, I'm sorry. I have not participated in this part of Black culture.
It's okay. We gonna get Gaelyn to watch Bad Boys.
I saw the end of one of them, and it was real good. I'm gonna go back and watch it.
You need to. It's so iconic. All of the movies, I'll say the first and the second movie are classics. This fourth one that just came out is an instant classic. I wasn't the biggest fan of the third movie that came out. I want to say like a couple years ago. I felt like they tried to do a little too much, and I just wasn't a fan of the storyline. But the movie itself, it was fine.
It's like if you're a long franchise, you always got that one in the franchise.
You got one.
It's
like we could take that out.
You know what I'm saying? Like Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift. Nobody claims that movie.
I like Tokyo Drift.
Oh,
I like Tokyo Drift. Y'all bugging.
Ayanna,
y'all are bugging. That movie has so many iconic scenes. Oh, we have to do an episode on that too.
Fast and Furious on that movies. I'm not watching.
I know, not all of them. We don't gotta watch all of them, but we should pick like our top two.
I think I've watched the first 5.
That's pretty decent. That's decent.
I had seen this headline that was like Black and Latino audiences will save movie theaters if we let them. And it's so true because I feel like I remember seeing like a study a few years ago that basically was like Hollywood loses about $30 billion a year by not doing Black and Asian stories.
Right.
Or like refusing
and marketing to like marginalized communities.
We are one thing about Black people, we finna go buy a movie ticket. I feel like, and we see it time and time again, we've had Black Panther, we had The Color Purple, we've had Bad Boys. Like, we are not the people that do not show up for movies. And so I'm not saying that every movie needs to be catered to Black people, but like time and time again, like we have seen that if you do good storytelling around the Black experience, we are
Yep.
going to pull up. So like, I want everybody to stop being shocked. Big Willie ain't going nowhere. Martin
Okay.
ain't going nowhere. Chris Rock,
Yeah.
also a legend in his own right, not going
Right.
nowhere. Like,
Yeah.
let's all be
And speaking of making stories for
calm.
different communities so that
Mm,
we can show up and support them and put other
mm,
people on some shows, today we are talking about only one show. It
yes.
is, to me, the best show that has come out in 2024. Diarra from Detroit. It's on BET Plus. It's one of their original shows, and I
Yes.
know I'm gonna start this episode by saying this. I know we all, in some right, have said something disgraceful about BET or BET Plus,
Yes.
and all of those comments are valid and true. But I think we are entering, or we've been, BET and BET Plus has been entering a new era where they are putting the money where their mouth is and they're supporting different creators so that we're not seeing the same type of show on their network. And DR from Detroit is one of those shows. It is a little different because it's not on BET, the traditional network. It's on BET Plus, which is kind of like the evil stepchild. That's
But
how they
see,
make
that's
it
what I want
seem.
to get into. But that's what I want to get into as we start talking about this, because
Mhm.
BET Plus is actually where all of their original content
Yes.
is occurring. If you
Yep.
watch BET, you're getting, there's a couple shows that are like on BET linear that are originals, but like their original content is on the streaming network. And I
Yep.
will say, like, especially right now when HBO shows don't seem to have the same hold on the culture that they used to, like BET
Mhm.
is actually doing prestige television for Black folks.
Yes.
And
It's
like, I
premium. It's
understand
elevated.
we
It's
don't want to
everything we
spend all
want.
the money. I get that we don't want to spend all the money on all the streaming services and da 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 da. I get it. Trust me. But like, BET Plus really does have the kind of content that we are asking for.
Yes.
Do I wish that they would put it on BET linear? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But because of the fact that it's streaming, you do get to do things that you wouldn't necessarily get to do. So I see both
Right.
sides of Chanel, but I do want us to like, I want to use this as a moment to like give BET their flowers for what they're doing on BET Plus and encourage
Right.
them to find ways to spread that to linear, because
Exactly.
BET's been around for entirely too many years for us to not be able to have conversations about the content on it in the same way that we're talking about a Stars or a Showtime or an HBO. Obviously, they're not going to make
Exactly.
TV for everyone, but they should be making prestige content for us. And I
Exactly.
wanted to
And
come
they
back.
are doing it. They have been doing it for the past couple years. I'm I'm blanking on the name of the show. Oh, the First Wives Club. That was on
Yeah,
BET Plus a couple years ago, and then now it's on Netflix. So like the shows that they're making are getting, you
they're
know,
selling them
more
off a little.
they're getting more viewers. But like honestly, if you have Amazon Prime, you can do the 1 week or 1 month free trial for BET Plus and watch all 8 episodes of DR from Detroit. So hopefully by the end of this episode, we convince some of y'all to watch it because, and I've said this multiple times on this show this season, but if DR from Detroit gets canceled, BET Plus, I'm coming for you. And anybody who has not watched the show, I'm coming for you too, because this show is so, so good. What other show do you know is able to mix comedy, drama, mystery, and true crime into one show and actually achieve what they're setting out to do?
Yeah, it's
What
a
other
good,
show?
it's a good
And
little
it's cultural. And it's cultural. It has so many cultural touch points for what it means to be a Black person in America. And then if
yeah.
you're from Detroit or Michigan, like there are a lot of touch
That
points
show
there.
is so Detroit. Oh my
It's
god.
so Detroit.
They
I
be
want
doing
to say
stuff
it was
I'm like,
filmed in
woo.
Jersey, though. It was filmed in Jersey, but it's because Jersey has a film
Exactly.
incentive to actually film there. But they
You
did a
called that though. You
beautiful.
called that like when we first started talking about the show. You were like, I think they filmed it in Newark, but I
Yep.
don't know.
Because I saw the easy pickings across the street from the rainbow, and I'm like, that's how we used to get to my grandmother's house.
I'm screaming. Ayanna said, "I see you."
I see it, and I love it. But Gaelyn,
Yes.
can you give us like a little overview
Yeah.
of the concept?
All right. So if you haven't seen the show, first of all, slap yourself. Second of all, here's what it's about. Diarra from Detroit follows a divorcee school teacher who is refusing to believe that she has been ghosted by her rebound Tinder date. Her search for the missing man pulls her into a decades-old mystery involving the Detroit underworld. As the case unfolds, her coworkers, friends, and lovers become unlikely allies as she falls down a dangerous rabbit hole.
Yes,
And I feel like that's a fair summary.
that is.
It's fair. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't give away too much.
And it's very specific to what this show is. It's not like, oh, a true crime mystery about this random kidnapping case. Like they really set the foundation for
Mhm.
who this lady is, where she's at in her life. She's a school teacher in the Detroit public system, so that's
Whew.
coming with problems. She's in the middle of getting a divorce from her husband, who is played by Morris Chestnut. That has a bunch of problems. And
I
then
want to talk
now
about
she's
that
like,
at some point because we got to.
yeah, we're gonna stick a pin in that. And then in the midst of her divorce, she's like, let me get back out into the dating scene. And the very first date she goes on, it's beautiful, it's amazing. It's like literally the reprieve, the peace that she's been looking for. And
Mhm.
then boom, the dude ghosts her. And
Yeah.
she's just like, I feel like some people may look at the log line or like look at the summary of the show and be like, oh, this is outlandish. This is honestly not that outlandish. I feel like this is like 1 degree, like a slight degree removed from reality, because like who is able to come up with the concept that like, no, this dude that I went on a date with didn't actually ghost me. I think he was kidnapped. And I
Yeah.
think he was kidnapped 20 years ago, and he's this missing boy that we've been looking for this
I
entire
think it's
time.
also funny, and I know we like have this question kind of later on the outline, but this show to me, if you can watch Only Murders in the Building and like
Mhm.
suspend your disbelief, you can watch this show. Because it
Exactly. I was
requires the same level of suspension of disbelief. Like, yes, it is a
exactly.
little crazy that you meet somebody, you have amazing sex on Tinder, and then they're kidnapped, and that's like that is a little crazy. But like living in an apartment building with several murderers, also insane.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
it's, it's a good show.
this show matches up with, it's obviously very different in terms of like the type of humor, and I think it's because this show has more of a cultural foundation for Black people. But Only Murders in the Building and Diarra from Detroit would make a great double feature if you watch like both
Absolutely.
pilots back to back.
I've only seen season 1 and part of season 2 of Only Murders. I just season 2 didn't do it for me.
Mm.
But
No,
I
that's
think
my
like
show. That's my show.
yeah, I'm gonna get back into it. I feel like Diarra made me kind of want to watch these true crime shows a little bit more. But Diarra from Detroit is an hour-long drama. It's like a dramedy true
Hmm.
crime. So if you like the true crime, if you like the dramas, if you like the comedies, you're gonna like it. I think there's something in there for everybody. And I really enjoy this show.
We're going to talk about kind of the things that we think the show did well, things that they could work on for season 2. Fingers crossed if BET Plus is not playing with their budget. One of the things that I really liked about this show is just that the fact that we have this roundabout star-studded cast. We have De'Ara Kilpatrick, who to me she was a new face, but she absolutely led this show like on her shoulders. She kept up the energy the entire season. And then we also have like these kind of like classic stars that we know from Black TV shows, Black films of the past. We have Felicia Rashad, we have Morris Chestnut. And even though these are like big stars in our world, they enter the show and it's not like they're too shiny, too bright to even pay attention to the concept, to the plot. For me, watching and seeing Felicia Rashad, like, it's her. It's not like she's unrecognizable, but for me, like, you have these top tier talent who are on the show and they fit into the world of the show. So Felicia Rashad plays the mom of this suspected kidnapped boy, and we see and hear her saying things that we would never hear Felicia Rashad saying in real life.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene where they're talking about like, oh, how many members of the Temptations have you slept with? And so it was like that level of comedy, that level of specificity that
Yeah.
took this star-studded cast and just integrated them so well into the world that we're watching.
I agree with you on Felicia. Felicia, cool. I felt like, yes, it was. I honestly, watching her, as much as I knew it was her, quote unquote, it didn't feel like her. It was an entirely different character than we've ever seen her play. And it kind of
Mm-hmm.
allowed her, for me, to disappear into the world. Morris Chestnut was Morris Chestnut. He actually bothered me. That was the casting that bothered me. I won't lie. And it's not because Morris Chestnut is bad in the show, but he just felt too bright, too shiny, too movie star. He did not disappear into the world of the show for me. And I think it didn't help that his character was her husband, who is quote unquote doing better than her and upped her circumstances. Like they never let him get out of the bright and shiny for me. And so
Yeah.
it was a
I
little, he did pull
hold
me
on.
out of the world of the show a lot. No shade to him. It just wasn't, it wasn't
Yeah.
set up for his success to blend in.
I had a different take, and I think it's only because Morris Chestnut's character, like he's used to playing like obviously it's like the partner of someone, or he is the main person who's in a
Yeah.
relationship. It's always like romantic and comedy leaning. Um and it was that in this show, but I felt like because they were getting a divorce and because there was a lot of tension between them, I had never seen him in that way. And so it's like, yes, he's this star-studded, like literally a movie star now on our TV screens, but the
Mhm.
type of character was a little different.
I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
I'm also
It felt Best Man. And Best Man, his character was always stressed, always had tension with somebody, and was always crying and hollering and trying to save it and hold on to his marriage. I don't know.
but
It just
he wasn't doing that in this show. That's the thing. He was
he was
in
trying
this
to
show.
hold on to his marriage. He said, "Don't divorce me, baby. Don't." Why?
He was
He was
was
chasing
with
her.
fully with another girl. He did try and like I think towards the middle of the show and towards the end of the show, he does come back and like he's fighting for Diarra and trying
Yeah.
to show up for her and to support her. But for the first half of the season, he don't want her. He was just like, I'm gonna live in my big house. You go back to
Well,
your
I feel like
parents'
when he
house.
would come like to this, when he came to the school and he was like, "Diarra, you really don't want this divorce like that." Like,
Yeah, but I felt like that was more so not a fighting for you statement, more so like a you don't want this because either way I'm going to be good and I've been supporting you all these years. And so for me
I
it was
hear
like
you.
it was a different type of tension, it was a different type of it wasn't a this is purely a like a positive romantic relationship. They clearly had a lot of problems and a lot of
Yeah.
those problems stemmed from like, lack of communication between the two of them. But yeah, and also Morris Chestnut is not the most important part of the show either.
He's
Like
not. He's not. It's
he's
just like
in it.
he did take me out. He took me out a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I was just
Yeah.
like, here come Morris. Like,
At what point in the show do you think at what point in the show or in like the unfolding of the case on the show do you think you really locked in? Because I remember when I had told you to watch it and you were like, okay, I watched the first episode, but I don't know. I
oh
don't
yeah, the first
know.
episode wasn't doing a thing for me.
So
I'm gonna be real honest. The
when
first
did you
episode
lock in?
was very slow. I think it was the second episode for me.
Mm-hmm.
Something about so the second episode, Diarra has a divorce party that is thrust upon her. And then she, in her search for, her missing Tinder date, she ends up at an underground sex club. And I feel like the dichotomy of those two things, of this group of women who is trying to will healing upon Diarra, and then this woman who is going in pursuit of knowledge, but therefore finds herself and is like exploring her sexuality and her power and her relationships to those things. Like, there was something about that was very interesting to me, because I think one of the things that the show really does highlight is like, we meet Diarra at a very vulnerable time. And she does what so many Black women do. Instead of facing their issues, they throw themselves into something else. So like this whole, like, I'm going to go find Deontay business is in a lot of ways a distraction from the work that she needs to do in terms of healing and understanding who she is now. But I think that episode allowed her to, in this distraction, still find herself. And I just feel like that was super interesting. Also, it's just like, again, I don't want to spoil the events of the show because it's hard to talk about it without spoiling the events of the show, but it's like there was just something so funny about the way that episode unlocks. It's also kind of the episode where she and my favorite character in the show, Crazy Moni, really finally like lock back in and are like, nah, we're friends and we've been friends since childhood, and like we're gonna be in this together. Like, that was the moment that they locked in. And for me, it's like, yes, Diarra is a fun character, but part of the show's appeal for me is like this chosen family that shows up for her. Whether it's Crazy Moni, whether it's Aja, whether it's T, as other characters come in that are, boyfriends and husbands and girlfriends of other people. Like, she really builds this kind of chosen family that ushers her through this experience. And for me, episode 2 is where all of that really solidified and just like pops in.
I agree. I think episode 1, I knew I was going to love the show from the pilot, because I'm like, this has everything that I've been asking for. A little bit of true crime, but it's not too scary where I'm like, I can't watch this by myself. Or it's funny, but it's not like haha funny, but you're not really cracking up when you're watching it. And then it's a drama, but it's not like, oh, I need to go cry after this because it has me feeling
Right.
depressed. Like, this show took the best parts of all three of those genres and merged them so seamlessly. And I think in the first episode, it's building the foundation. And so the core of this show is based off this event of Deontay Brooks. I think he was a first grader being kidnapped back in 1995. And we know from the way that the characters are responding to this event being brought up that this was a huge moment for the community, and it's something that rocked them then, and it still rocks them now. And so the first episode is just building that foundation. We have Diarra. We know all the crazy stuff that's going on in her personal life, and then we have this like historical moment of this Black boy in Detroit being kidnapped, and to this day, no one knowing what happened. And then we add in like the funny moments, and I think for me, like, I don't know if there was a specific episode. I think I really locked in, like I said, from the trailer, from the pilot, but the comedy comes from those cultural moments. Like, a long time ago, there was a YouTube video. I think somebody in Detroit, it's like a song that somebody made in Detroit, and it's like,
that's right.
So in the D. Am I supposed to keep peace? It's all on it. It's mine. Working something like, and so I remember watching this video and somebody put me onto it in high school, and it's like, oh my god, this is so funny. They work that like cultural moment in real life into the show, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. It's from the way that, like, imagine us like trying to find like a real life missing person. Like, what are those comedic moments? What's that comedic timing? A lot of it is going to come from the way we relate to each other as Black women, and I think that's what this show does so well. But a lot of that starts to come through clearly and more cohesively starting in the second episode. So if you are starting the show, just keep it pushing. You won't have to make it through too much.
The first episode wasn't it wasn't like the first episode was.
It was a great pilot. It was a great pilot.
It just didn't grab me immediately. But I think it's so funny when you talk about like it's so specific. Not only is it Black as hell, it's Detroit as hell, it's Black Detroit as hell, and it's 90s as hell. Like, in the sense of, not only did he go missing back in 95, he went missing the same day that the OJ verdict came out.
Yeah.
There is a whole evidence and story plot point that is unraveled because of strippers who decided to work the lunch shift during the OJ verdict. Like, that is that is something that you have to really be like in touch with the world that you're building to create that. And I think like it didn't feel like Detroit was a backdrop, and it didn't feel like a murder mystery was like a plot point. Like, Diarra Kilpatrick actually set out, when she says it, like, to create a true crime series. It just so happens to be Black and set in Detroit. And I think because she actually utilized all of these things instead of making anything like a background or a window prop or whatever, it just is such a well lived in show. Like, it just, I don't know, it kind of feels like it, not that these are the same tone at all, but it's like, it feels like a side mission in The Wire. You know what I mean? Like, it has this very like lived in quality that is like, you know, the city that you're in, you're telling a very specific story, the way that all of these things interact, like, it just is really well done. But I think like that specificity for me is what like sets it above other things that I've watched.
Right. And obviously Diarra Kilpatrick, who is the creator and star of the show, she's from Detroit. And then Claudia Logan, who plays Moni, the best friend in the show, she's also from Detroit. So you have people who know what it is to have that identity, to grow up in a place like that. And you can tell that they're very clearly injecting that into the DNA of the show.
And even the rest of the cast, it was so funny because I was watching some of the like after show things that they have for it. But even like Brian Terrell Clark, who plays T, he's not from Detroit, but he is from Baltimore. And there is a point where inner city life is inner city life. Like, there is things where it's like, y'all may say different words. Like, I'm from DC, so I don't do the Baltimore slang. Like, they say like dummy and like chew. And like, it's different slang, but like, we all have everybody got a crazy Moni somewhere in their city. Everybody has an Aja who, you know, was born in, you know, maybe less economically sound circumstances and then rises above their station. Like, all of these
Mm-hmm.
people exist in every city, but the way that they exist on the show is very like specific to Detroit.
Right. And it feels like they're all weaved together really well. Like sometimes you watch a show and it's like, oh, those two characters could have just been one character because they
Yeah.
have the same POV, they have the same opinion. This cast is like all Black and they're in the
So
show. They're all from Detroit, but they're all so specific in the things, the goals that they're going after, the people that they're dating, even how they respond to Diarra now going on this investigative journey. Like some of them are like, girl, you crazy. This is some white people stuff. And then Diarra's like, this is not white people stuff. This is just Black people stuff. Like we need to find this missing boy.
kind of like riffing on the question you just asked, like not when did it lock in for you, but like if you were Diarra's friend, right? Like if you was, her homegirl, at what point, it's like a two-parter question. At one point, if you're her friend, are you like, nah, girl, like maybe you're onto something, I'm with you? And at what point are you like, bitch, I gotta go? Like, I gotta.
For me, because I'm not a ride or die. I'm not dying. I'll ride, but I'm not dying. I'm tapping out in the moment in, I want to say it's episode 2 when Diarra.
It's like you said episode 2.
I think it's either episode 1 or episode 2 when Diarra and Moni go to Chris. His name is Chris.
Yeah, Deontay. Chris. It's both.
Yeah.
Chris, Ambi, and Deontay.
And Chris. So in episode 2, when Moni and Diarra find out where Diarra's missing Tinder date, where he lives, they go in and there's this Russian man who I think he had a gun. He was also naked and he was in the closet. Like you could tell something happened where like he was going there to get something and it did not end well. And so you have Diarra and Moni walking in and they see this Russian man. I would have been out at that point. Like, good luck if you want to stay, but I'm out.
I'm tapping out in episode 2 as well. I'm tapping out in episode 2 as well, but for me, I get a little further. We in the van with Felicia Rashad.
That was episode 2. I didn't realize that happened so early.
Episode 3.
Because I know I want to say it was probably episode 3 or a little later. Because remember the Russian guy got.
It is episode 3.
I almost gave a spoiler.
Yeah, no, it's episode 3. But it's like once she said, "Get in the van." Nah, big dog, I don't want it that bad.
I'm like, Felicia, I'm okay. And she threw them in the back of the van too.
Right, and didn't tell them where they were going, what they were doing, none of that. Yeah. It was crazy. However, I loved her character story.
Who's Felicia's?
Felicia Rashad's character of like this woman who, loses her child and then goes on these like vigilante quests to find other children. Like, right. I thought that storyline was dope. Also, if you guys like that storyline, then you would like Found on NBC.
Yeah,
because that's essentially, it's about a woman who was kidnapped, who saves herself, and then starts a firm where she finds missing people that folks aren't looking for. So very similar storylines. But I thought that was just a really interesting, like beyond having Felicia Rashad cussing and talking about sex, they also gave her this really deep, poignant storyline that just like was hidden by a rougher exterior.
Exactly. Yeah, but that is pretty much I feel like as much of an overview as we can give without giving spoilers. And I know this episode, I don't know, hopefully don't feel too all over the place, but that's what happens when you have a show that's built on a true crime case, because you can't be like, oh, in episode 1 this happens, and in episode 5 this happens, because we're gonna spoil the most important. One of the best parts about the show is the twists and the turns that it takes you on. It's truly a journey from episode 1 to episode 8. And there is no way in no world where a viewer is going to be able to guess where we start and where we end. There's just no way. You think certain people are certain people, and boom, 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 the plot has twisted. The plot has been twisted and turned. So definitely watch it. Hopefully, listen to this episode. If y'all like our little description, start from episode 1 and just like try and tap in. And then also watch the after show that they have on YouTube. After each episode, Diarra Kilpatrick, the star and creator of the show, she sits down with the cast and the crew, and they kind of just unpack the episodes and where the story is taking us in a similar way with the wind down episodes from Insecure. So tap into the show, tap into the after show on YouTube, and let us know if y'all are liking Diarra from Detroit. Okay.
Yeah. You guys Yeah, definitely tune in. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on Spotify. Let us know on Instagram. Let us know everywhere. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on the show? What are your thoughts on this episode? So before we get up out of here, I just wanted to plug this friend of the podcast, Thomas. He was on our season finale last season. He was my castmate in Fat Ham. He is currently raising money for his short film called Absent. It is about fatherhood and mentorship and Black men in DC. And so we are going to put in the podcast description. We'll also link it on the Instagram as well. But if you have some money to help a young Black filmmaker get the story told, please go ahead and donate. And like I
Open your
said,
purses.
you said what?
Open your purses.
Open your purses. Juneteenth is coming.
Yes.
Have you given money to a Black person yet? And if you
Have
haven't,
given it to us
Thomas.
or Thomas.
Yeah, or us, both.
And,
give it Thomas. We're going to link that in the Instagram. And if you want to go see all of that, you can follow us at No Sleep Till Hollywood on Instagram. You can follow me, Gaelyn D. Smith, at G Smitty with 2 T's and 4 Y's on anything with an @ symbol.
And you can follow me on Instagram at Ayanna Costley and on TikTok at Ayanna Online. And if you like this episode, if you watch Diarra from Detroit and you like it, watch Only Murders in the Building. Also watch Found on NBC. And then also watch Dead to Me on Netflix.
Or you can watch American Vandal on Netflix as well.
Oh,
also,
I still have to watch that.
That show is hilarious.
I'm going to get into
Girl, what? That show has me screaming. Particularly, I think season 2 is better than season 1 better than season 2. I don't remember, but it's good.
I'll figure it out. Yeah, but yeah, that's our episode.
That has been another episode of the No Sleep Till Hollywood podcast. Until next time, bye-bye, bonjour, good night, bye guys.
Bye, y'all.